Hey, what's going on, ladies? It's astrologer Eric Rosen, and congratulations, you've stumbled upon She Unleashed. I had to look at the title of what I called it. She Unleashed 2021. This is all about the Venus homecoming. I am an astrologer, I do astrology. I look at the study of the cosmos, of the predictable patterns of the planets, and what's going on up there in the solar system, and how it affects us and influences us here on Earth. And my God, like what an important time for women right now. I can tell you, as a man who's choosing to walk a divine masculine path of, getting in touch with his deeper intuitive spiritual side as a man, and looking at the astrology, that this is really a time for the divine feminine to lead. This is a time for women to step back into leadership, to step back into the pure creation energy and just owning that and rocking that. And that comes in so many forms, and comes in forms of nourishment, of nourishing the self. It comes in the forms of, setting energetic boundaries, within the self, in order to go out and do the amazing things the woman wants to do, instead of succumbing to expectations of like perfection and like doing it all. I think one thing that COVID really revealed for us here in 2020 was that we really needed to slow down. That, the modern course of humanity, especially in America, the way that it was headed, wasn't something that was going to be conducive for our long-term health, our long-term mental health, our emotional well-being. Like, it allowed us to kind of get back into a flow state, and to really tap into a deeper spiritual connection, to get into spiritual flow, to get an understanding of how to protect ourselves. I think energetically, as ironically, things like social distancing had some weird merit to it, of the understanding of like, energetically protecting ourselves from people. Like, we're all highly empathic. We can just absorb other people's emotions. And so I can go on and on, but really what I want to get into is why I'm doing this here today. And this is actually going to be a 4-part series. There's going to be 3 videos on the women's aspect of this Venus homecoming, She Unleashed. And then I'm also going to do a bonus video for the fellas, to see how it affects them, and also how they can be supportive to the women. And, basically I just wanted to do this because there's a bit of a war cry energy for women with this, some really special astrology, I think, that's coming up here, for women to kind of go boldly where no woman has gone before. And it can feel a little bit scary, and there can be some apprehension in doing this. But I wanted to get into the significance of how that's going to look, when that's going to occur. And in the future videos, I'm going to show like what the benefits are, but then also, a little bit of like missed opportunity, although it's like, it's okay. Like, whatever path, you choose as a woman, like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, there's so much shame that can be created if someone thinks that they're not doing it right. And that's not what this is about. This is more about showing freedom of choice, freedom if a woman does want to dig deep and evolve out of the shackles that she's been in for the past couple thousand years, as toxic masculinity has been suppressing, women from being truly empowered. This is a really rare and grand opportunity to do this. There's just, astrology shows us where portals open, where there's opportunities. It lets us know how to forecast things, and to just really step into it and take some really big, leaps into it. But ones that are spiritually supported too. It's not ones that you can get hurt by. These are just ones that the only pain and suffering is that the ego can experience from trying to hold on to an old way of being, because sometimes we can get used to the shackles. We can get used to the bondage experience, as crazy as that sounds. That just sort of becomes a comfort zone. So I have a chart pulled up in front of me that I'm going to be reading here. That's why the camera's kind of angled a little bit. I didn't really feel like pulling it up on the screen. I don't think everybody cares about the technical terms, but for what it's worth, the dates that I'm going to start looking at this is actually going to be starting on April 10th. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at April 10th, April 11th, and April 12th. That's what today's video is going to cover. And this is really all about Venus, which is the planet of relationships, of your self-worth, of your values, your skill set, of just living a physically comfortable quality life. It rules money. And when I say rules, I mean like that's, that's what the character represents. You can think of planets in astrology as characters, and Venus is like Aphrodite eating grapes off of the grape branch on the velvet couch, so to speak. She wants to feel good. She wants to feel good about herself. She wants to retain her beauty. She wants to retain her partnerships. She just wants life to feel good. It's like, and I know this gets a bad context biblically, but I think the Garden of Eden is actually a beautiful thing. I think the Garden of Eden is actually the abundance of earth for us to celebrate the physical things that necessitate our well-being, but they're available in abundance. The way the apples grow on the trees, the way the oranges grow on the trees, the way that plants grow out of the ground, and so this is like, there's a lot of like really cool stuff about Venus, about, pointing out that the whole Eve eating the apple thing, it was just that was like probably towards the beginning, maybe, or at least, towards the middle of toxic masculinity, making up these stories about women, and it's just suppression of power. But so we're in Aries season, right? So that means the sun is in Aries, and Venus is also in Aries, and so Venus is ahead of the sun. But you know what? In Aries we also have Mercury, we have Chiron, we have the moon, and so this is what you call a stellium in astrology. This is where there's so much energy in one zodiac sign that it's a little bit like, it can be a trash compactor feeling with it being in Aries, because you're trying to like ram everything forward, and it's almost like trying to like push things like really far forward, and things are getting backed up a little bit, but it can feel a little bit garbage like with Chiron there, because Chiron's a planet that deals with like sensitivities. Like it just doesn't look the way that you want it to. Like things are not going to be perfect. You're not going to feel the way that you want to. Your hair's not going to look perfect. Like this, I'll be honest, this is speaking a lot to vulnerability, about showing up in your power and strength even when you don't feel your best, and still speaking your truth and communicating what it is that you like really want in your partnerships, who you are, who you identify as, and just really staying emotionally charged in that, especially on this day. And it's important to understand that with Uranus, which is in Taurus, this is a long transit, that we are evolving at a really rapid pace, even though sometimes it can feel like a long turn, but it changes rapidly. But we're on a long curve of deep transformation, deep growth, deep unpredictable change in our partnerships and our value systems, money situations, just like what we value like as a person. And it can make us feel funky sometimes, like that we're changing our minds a lot, or that we're getting, maybe sometimes it's getting spiritual insight that seems like contradictory to something you learned, or something that's different from yesterday. But it's really just about, just go where the elevator's like taking you, just whatever the floor is that you're getting off in your day-to-day life. Take the messages, don't confuse them with feeling crazy, or, well, my old value system said this, my old traditional set of values says this, or this is what I was raised on. This is more just about, there's a lot about playing it like your day-to-day reality life, especially with the North Node in Gemini. It's more about the simple things in life and the simple approaches and the changes in your mindset on the things that you can do. With Mars there, it's about how can you really charge forward and make those changes and be regal in those aspects, because, and I say regal in like being a queen, because you have Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius, and so yes, let's stay super positive and beneficial about the future, even though we may not physically know like where things are going. But Leo is meant to balance out all this heavy Aquarius energy with the two biggest planets in Aquarius. And so it's like, be the queen, make the changes, make it from that, if you know the tarot deck, the Queen of Cups, changes of feeling emotionally fulfilled in those changes. You don't want to feel like you got backed into a wall. I don't know why I'm seeing like an image of like a car backing up too far, and then it like goes off a hill, and then if you've ever seen a car on the side of the road, and then it's like its ass end is like in the ditch. It's like, that's not a good look for anybody. And so it's like you could feel upended and like looking up at the sky, not being able to feel grounded. You don't feel like you're in control. You kind of feel like maybe you're slipping backwards. And so it's like make the changes from an emotional place and don't feel like you have to be pressured into it because of shame, because you think that this is the way it's supposed to go, or it looks good or it looks bad. It's be in your emotional fulfillment as a queen before you make those changes. And so the big thing about this April 10th, 11th, 12th dates that's really special, ladies, is the fact that Venus is going to form what is called a square, which I'll explain, to Pluto and Capricorn. Number one, a square is a challenge. It's like two energies meeting in a dark alley somewhere, or maybe there's a little bit of light depending on what the planets are and what signs they're in, but they kind of collide a little bit, and it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to grow. Like there's common ground, because when you think about it, Capricorn and Aries both really want to move forward. And so Venus and Aries is like, I really want to move forward in my partnerships and feeling good and, creating like a more posh like lifestyle. And Pluto and Capricorn's like, yeah, actually, I know how to get you that. But like, you're going to have to like climb this mountain over here. And with Pluto and Capricorn, it's almost like a weird mountain in the underworld a little bit, of like going into like some shadowy darkness, and like a lot of shadow work, if you know that term, of facing like the parts of self that maybe don't want to be acknowledged, which there's so many tricks that can be taught to do that. Carl Jung's a great place to start if you're new to that. But it's the understanding that they both want to move forward, they both want to feel good. Pluto's there to help. It's just that the problem is that Pluto is the great adversary, I would say, to shame, because Pluto doesn't give a fuck. Pluto's like, what's your truth? What's your desire? What do you want? What is your thirst in life? What are you thirsty for, ladies? Are you thirsty for, spiritual achievement? Is it financial? Is it, maybe it's doing taboo stuff, in partnerships? Who knows? It's like Pluto doesn't care. Pluto's all about the occult and the taboo stuff. And so this is like one of those things where it's like, to hell with the old Capricorn traditions that Pluto is like tearing down the tower of. Venus is in Aries in a brand new season, a brand new, seasonal new year, and it's going to come home to its home sign in Taurus, which is what, this whole Venus homecoming is about, is like this build up to it. But while Venus is in Aries, it's like, first it's like, what's the independence? It reminds me of like a railroad track, like, putting down one rail at a time. Let Venus like decide on her own, what does she want, without influence of traditions, of patriarchy, of just distinguishment energy, of like, toxic masculine gentleman energy, just like any of that. Like nothing that's programmed in the mind, nothing that anyone says. It could be a father, Capricorn, Saturn energy is father in astrology. And so it's more about like celebrating your independence, celebrating your sovereignty, and just going out and, if you want to do that, the wild woman thing, it's like, what's your version of the wild woman? Meaning like you don't subscribe to like any social norms, but you've also had enough wisdom and experience with the Pluto being in Capricorn to know like how far is too far with like energetic and physical boundaries of maybe some things that you felt in your life were like past mistakes. This could be alcoholism, this could be drug use, it could be, a lot of sex, it could be, really, it could be anything really that social norms are going to shame, okay? And so this is an opportunity to like really dive deep and forgive that. And so one of the ways that this is done is, and I want to say this, it's like, this isn't something anybody has to do. This reminds me a little bit of like a video game, I know probably most women aren't playing like these types of video games, but just bear with me for a second. It's like there's a main story to the video game, and then to make the game more fun and to make it more entertaining and valuable to someone investing and playing this video game or buying the video game, they'll create these side quests which are not things that are necessary for beating the game or finishing the game or anything. But a lot of people are like, I want to have 100% completion. I want to complete the whole game and explore all of it and have fun. And so this transit of Venus square Pluto, which Pluto's dealing with all this, aspects of like, do you really want to thirst and have it all and get it all, is going on these side quests and getting that 100% completion. And so there's a lot of like romantic spiritual hunger. There's a lot of like, stepping up and serving a deeper purpose, a dharma, with it being Pluto and Capricorn. And so it's like the willingness to like dig down into the deepest depths of the psyche and emotionally and say, you know what, this is like what has to be done, and this is the courage that I have to have as a woman to like speak my truth and not fall for shame and blocks, and to just really speak from the sacral, speak intuitively about like what the woman is like really feeling, which has been suppressed for so long. And so going on the side quest is just like the most deeply gratifying, satisfying thing that you can do, to where you get to the end of your life, which Capricorn does deal with old age, wisdom, legacy, what are you going to leave behind? And so you're satisfied not only, by giving it your all by the end, but even just like what you leave behind, or if you want to tap into, the fulfillment from a higher spiritual level of whatever happens, like when you die, when you leave, a lot of people believe in these post-life like reviews of like, hey, how'd you do or whatever. And the soul could just be really deeply satisfied when you're dealing with Pluto and Capricorn. And so the way to do this, as I was getting to, is it's kind of like diving down into a pond without an oxygen mask, without a scuba diving tank or gear, and holding your breath long enough, which I don't recommend, this is a metaphor, but diving deep long enough to pull the drain on the lake and get down to the bottom of the emotional well and let that water drain emotionally, and then collect the treasures that are down there. So this is an act of surrendering. This is an act of saying, you know what, whatever it is that I'm feeling emotionally, I can't go and just distract myself with partnerships or my usual to-do list. It's just facing it. It's like when the fear shows up and just saying like, yes, like I'm going to face this. I have a feeling that a lot of it has to do with probably opportunities to speak your truth, boundaries, saying like, this is what I need right now. I need to go do this. I need to find out something about myself. It could be feeling like you have to maybe even seclude yourself from masculine energy for a little bit, to even just be apart from those energies. And it's really just what any woman who's like even gotten this far into the video, I think, has already experienced, which is that whenever you're overcome with just, waves of emotion, you just learn to surrender to them, and you get these awarenesses that come from much deeper within and not the mind. And those are the treasures. It's knowing who you really are, knowing who you want to be, who do you really want to identify as, what's the truth that you truly want to speak, and just roaring it out, like just rah, like the lioness energy, and just like speaking it, or whatever it is that you identify with. Perhaps you're more of like a justice card in the tarot, and it's more like being like fair and balanced and speaking poetically. It doesn't matter, like whatever the expression it is of who you truly are and what you truly represent. And there's a lot of abundance in this, with Venus making positive aspects to Jupiter and Aquarius. And so this is like the abundant futuristic story that you're creating for yourself by doing this deep inner work now, ladies. And I think that it's really getting down to, I think at the bottom of this well, one of the things that you might find is just this like pure creation energy, this pure potential, because it's like once you get past the boundaries, like mentally and emotionally, of who you thought that you were, or what you're letting go of, especially with Neptune and Pisces, letting go of like the subconscious past lives, all those things. is it's pure creation, it's pure potential. It's almost like going so deep into the core of the self that is like unadulterated by anything that's like happened, especially in your present lifetime, that you just realize that really this reality is a mental simulation, and that the only things that are making it essentially real in the terms of how we experience it is actually us. There's just been so much adulterated outside external influence, past lives, people's energy, and things like that. So this is an opportunity to like dive deep and get and be so energetically protected from that, and to go beyond that fear of, feeling like crazy. Because there's a thing with women, right, about like they've got to like be perfect and have it all like together and stuff, and it's fucked up, but it's bullshit, obviously. But there's an opportunity to be able to go so deep within that self that abundance and that pure creation potential is there, and then it's like, oh, who do I want to be? Like, I can be anything I want. Like, there's literally nothing holding me back, and there's just so much like positivity in this. And I'm not saying that like this is like the ultimate like transformation of like you'll never have to do spiritual work again, or that everything's going to be peachy. Like, this is just like where it's like an up levelment to, almost like a status, I would say, for probably the next 6 months, that it's almost like a sense of feeling almost untouchable in terms of like what you can achieve and who you are. Sure, there'll be, I'm talking a lot about toxic masculine energy because we are dealing with this stellium in Aries, right, which is masculine. It's as masculine as it gets. And they'll try to throw chains on you a little bit, but it's like they won't stick. There's nothing they can do. Like no matter what the guy projects, or what masculine energy is even projected from other women, because we all have those energies, right? And it just won't stick. And so this is just kind of like a really, deep place that you can really go to. I think that it's really important for women to be supportive of one another during this time, forming a support group. Like, I always like to give like practical things in these, these talks and these, these astrology videos of like looking outward. And I think that like having some type of sisterhood, a support group of sisters, with rituals and things like that, just, talk support group, and maybe just flow intuitively like with what those symbolic ceremonial rituals are for helping initiate one another. Because it's not something that needs to be done alone. I think it's just important to like get away from like traditional norms and toxic masculine energies, and just anything that is going to like corrupt the birthing process of like what can happen here. And I think the most important thing is to remember that it's all love, right? And to love yourself through this whole process, because the more that judgment comes into this whole process of how this could look, should you choose to accept this mission, because Capricorn is mission. It's a big one. It's a deep one with Pluto. You would spend so much time just like trying to purify yourself emotionally, purifying the water, by having shame that you're not able to even dive deep and pull that drain and get those treasures and get to the bottom of things, because the water, the emotions become so toxic with your own self-ridicule, or that outside ridicule I mentioned, getting away from the toxic masculine patriarchy energy, that you would just have to come back up to the surface and play pool boy again, getting the nastiness out of the water. And it's almost like it's a reset. It's going into nature, it's eating food, it's whatever, which those things are going to like happen anyway during this time. But it's more like, how deep can you dive when the opportunity presents itself? Because that's the thing is with Jupiter, is this is creating like a really grand opportunity to really like start to portray the future of like, how are women going to show up as warriors, warrioresses? How are they going to be? So I think too, this is also an opportunity for what I would call financial liberation for women, to throw money in here because Venus does deal with money and Pluto deals with receiving money. And Capricorn wants money and Aries knows what it wants. And so it's like, it's financial liberation. It's liberation in partnerships of having your sovereignty. It's, you know, liberation of your values. There's so much just like liberation energy, but it comes from those that are owning their desires. Because what comes from this like pure potential creation energy, ladies, when you get to the bottom of this and you get past the fear, is at the level of pure creation, and Pluto's the ultimate teacher of showing us like that there really is no like right, wrong, and there's really no meaning to anything other than what you emotionally, electrically charge it to. And so it's really just like, what's your inspiration? And with Venus and Jupiter, like those are the great beneficial creative planets in terms of artistry. There's a lot of like artistic development going on, you know, during this time and especially over these days. But the capitalization of that, like using that energy, comes in the future videos. But it's starting to build, just like a tree has to grow underground first. And it's the desire is just what comes out of like getting into this pure potential energy, because nothing, that's it. Like there's no like right or wrong. There's nothing like that has to be done. Like Pluto's teaching us that it's like, the more we say like, this is what I was taught, or this is what it is, or this is what I have to do, we put pressure on ourselves. We're not having fun. Venus is not enjoying herself. She doesn't feel good. We're basically blocking ourselves from our desires when we start shooting ourselves and saying like, this is the way that it has to be, because it's just not true. And then it creates more shame. And so it's just like, what's the desire? And the way that this gets blocked, and the reason that it's important during this process to like practice radical forgiveness and to not feel shame over anything that's happened in the past, is because we especially block the desires whenever we did pursue our desires in the past, but then we feel like it was a mistake, it wronged us, it got us into trouble, it put us where we were at. But that's the key element to understand here, is it was all perfect. It was all giving us the Capricorn wisdom and experience of the challenge and the upheaval in our lives, in order for the ladies that are tuning into this to be strong enough to teach other women how to like up-level themselves into the divine feminine. Because like the right, wrong, dualistic thinking is only going to create shame and keep women in basically spiritual, mental, emotional poverty, that they're somehow like a weaker race or something. Even though no one's like saying that, it's almost like this is like the way to get to like the real crux of like what a divine feminine really is, and getting away from like maybe some of the feminism, which is like a little toxic in nature, because it's like not really coming from a true emotionally strong, intuitive place. It's coming from a wounded place. It's coming from a Chiron and Aries place. And so it's, how do you express this? How do you put this out there? And I think the most intuitive way to like flow through all this is a sense of compassion for the self, because if not, it's going to just create like more hardship. It creates that restriction of creativity because of the pressure to perform and for it to look a certain way, and certain beliefs or ideals, or this is the way it should be. And then you can't step into your creative desire, because that's what desire ultimately is. It's basically a sense of expression, of your creative expression of who you are and what you're creating outside yourself. And so this is a time for recreating and taking ownership of new values. Like, I always like to give examples of values real quick, because sometimes that can mean a lot of things. But it's like, as a man, it's like an original value as a man would be fame, work progress, achievement, financial gain. You know, it could be having a strong muscular body, and just all these different things. But it's like, with Pluto, how can you like recreate like what makes you feel successful? Because for me, if I kept sticking to those like old ideas, sure, I could be successful, but I would be stuck in perpetual fear, because reality is changing so much with Uranus and Taurus asking us to change our values, that it's necessary to have higher level spiritual values. So like my values have become more about, I'll just be honest, like sex is one of them, you know, because sex is a great expression of like creative energy and of owning desire, you know, Pluto, desire, right? Like that expression and the things that can be energetically, spiritually created from that energy and not feeling bad about it. It's expression for me, you know, it's like there used to be a time where, and I'm still detoxing this, where it was more about how many likes was I getting? Was I getting clients? At this point, it's become way more about I have something I want to say. I just want to go out and say it and practice expressing myself from an emotionally intuitive place and being more vulnerable with it. So, recreation of your values, ladies, is like, what did you used to be maybe like, say, 10 years ago? And like, do you reflect subconsciously and also consciously when you're feeling like you're not doing something right or you're feeling shame? Have you looked at like what your values like currently are and updating those spiritually? Because I bet if you looked at those, you would see that you are succeeding. It's just when you feel shame, it's because it's being based on an old set of values that's no longer serving you. So this is a great time for passion projects. You know, I would say only like 1 to 2, because Pluto Capricorn is restriction energy. Like Pluto Capricorn's like, I'll get you there, I'll get you everything you want, I'll get you the power, I'll get you just whatever it is that you're looking for, but I'm going to get you that because I'm going to close doors to too many opportunities. And Venus is projects and feeling good in those creative expressions. So 1 to 2 passion projects, Pluto passion, that feels not restricting, but that feels very youthful with Venus and Aries, and that you can be a little bit foolish with, like that it's not attached to patriarchal terms of kind of like what I was just describing of like, well, I want to do this, but it has to get me money or it has to get me notoriety, or I'm going to do this thing because then I'll feel better about myself, then I'll feel worthy, then people will recognize me, or then I'll be perfect, then it'll all be done, I'll feel great. You know, it's like, no, go and be foolish with it. And I would say these 1 to 2 projects are going to be electrically charged, not only with a sense of like, what are you really here to do? And I think this is an opportunity to like really solidify that in yourself of like, what are you really here to do in this lifetime with this energy? And they're electrically charged together in the way that you're going to express that passion, to express that purpose, to express it with a sense of innocence and foolishness, that it's not attached to things. And it could even be something, because we're dealing with a lot of like solo energy, but also like relationship energy. Maybe one project is completely independent, something you do on your own. And then maybe one of the other ones is something you do with like a romantic partner or a partner, you know, if you're into collaboration. But it's like, have something for yourself. There was a movie called The Shift by Dr. Dwayne Dyer, who's passed away, but this always comes up. And this is a spoiler alert, so fast forward like 30 seconds if you don't want to hear this, but there was a woman who was married and she had boys, 2 sons, and they were on this retreat, and she was basically like doing everything for everybody. And even the dad was like kind of like a big kid relying on her a little bit. It's kind of weird, to be honest, but it was like she had suppressed doing some type of art. I don't remember what it was, but she hadn't been doing it, and then she started like doing it again, and she like rediscovered her passion and kind of had a little bit of like a emotional breakdown. And then finally she just like communicated like that she was going to stay at this like retreat vacation place, and that the dad, you know, this is what she needed. The dad was going to go home and take care of the boys for a week or 2, which, because he was kind of like a big kid, like he wasn't really the person like doing making the lunches, you know, and giving the showers and the baths and whatever, you know, that type of energy. But it was something that she had to have for herself. It wasn't tied to the family. It wasn't tied to financial gain. It was just tied to a passion. And you know what? That's the funny thing. It's like when there's not attachment to these things, if like you're seeking these things, like maybe those things happen. But right now, North Node and Gemini, it's more about reaping like what you've already kind of sown in your life in terms of like, you know, what your truth is, of like what's important to you, and being simple with it. It's not about trying to like get too far with it. I think Pluto and Capricorn right now is like is teaching us that this old way of keeping up with the Joneses, like that whole shit's already over. And now it's really just about like, hey, like, are you really living life to the fullest? Like, are you doing the things that you want and just like not feeling ashamed of it? That's really what it comes down to. So that's it. This video is supposed to be like 10, 11 minutes long. It turned into 33, go figure. But just to recap, part one, Venus in Aries, squaring Pluto. This is a really important time to really dive deep, find out what are you here to do. But it comes from surrendering into the emotions and not letting the emotions be bottled up. And it's okay. It's not like you have to like express it in front of other people right now if you want to retreat and go into hermit mode to do it. But it's like, get honest, radically honest about the emotional deep awareness of what's going on, and like really be almost like emotionally detective like, of like, don't be afraid, like when you're feeling these things happening, to do your best to not pull yourself out of it, to not let your mind take over or judge or label it, and almost just like peering into it. It's almost like when you see someone like peering into the dark in a movie, and there's something in there and there's something rattling, it's making a noise, and you might be like, why are they doing that? Like there's something scary back there. Like why are they like peering in to see what it is? It's clearly pitch black. Why don't they get out of there? It's because those people in those movies are the star characters, and they're ones that get remembered. They're the heroes. It's the people that like run out of the room that aren't remembered from a spiritual standpoint as well as here on earth, because they did want to run out of the room. So this is about really peering in and staying fixed on that. And remember, there's no wrong choice with this. This is an opportunity, ladies. Like this is the way, from the way that I see it, from my perspective of how to really step into your divine feminine power, that it just stands to reason on all levels, logically, emotionally, spiritually, that in order to step into that, it's not something that's given. It is receiving it, yes, like it's your birthright. But first comes like the letting go and surrender energy of going into the emotions to break down the old paradigms that are blocking that from integrating fully. So Pluto is scary and saying, I have what you need, but Venus has to be brave enough in Aries to say, okay, I'm willing to receive this. So that's it. I'll be back maybe in a couple of days with part two. I don't really have like a calendar or a cadence for this. I just know I wanted to get this out because April 10th is coming up fast. But part two is really going to be all about Venus coming into Taurus, and also like what that looks like. And there's a lot of good information about what's going on there. And as I mentioned, it's going to mention, you know, how the story is going to continue to play out based on like how you deal with these things. And so part three will get a little bit further into the beginning of May. So these videos are going to cover the rest of April and into early May. And then the fourth bonus video is going to be for the fellas for this whole thing. And so if you have any questions, you can drop a comment, or you can email me at ericrosenmenscoach@gmail.com. I do focus on coaching and supporting men. So like if you do have a man in your life or a friend or somebody that is willing to be courageous enough to make changes within themselves, especially men that want to step up and, you know, get clear on what's really going on with them, to have a sense of passion and purpose in life, that wants to especially love to focus with men that want to empower women the same way that I do. And that's what a lot of this is about. But that's why I'm doing this like for women, is because part of the divine masculine approach is not just like helping men with that, but then also being protectors and supporters and promoters of women, and even humbling, if I'm being really honest, from what I've seen of like the true power and sovereignty of women and what they're here to do, and just playing my role as the divine masculine, not in a in a weak way that means that we're not equals. This is about both of us being equal and playing our parts. And when you do that, talk about divinity. All right, ladies, love you all. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk soon.